So I was rummaging through my shit. See, my fat ass was planning ahead. I fucking bought some chips. You know, fucking diet. You know, fucking coronavirus, motherfucker. There ain't no more rules. You know? Like, I'm gonna need these goddamn fat reserves if all you grocery store workers start fucking keeling over and shit. So, sound thinking right here. I don't even like Pearl Jam. They fucking suck. Like, out of grunge bands, Alice in Chains, top notch. Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, don't give a fuck. Like, pretty much Nirvana and Alice in Chains is all I like. We're all sleepless in Seattle in this fucking country, I'll tell you that. Yeah, so there's nothing worth watching on the fucking internet. Like, I've reached the fucking end of the internet. Got all this Trump garbage. We get it. I'm pissed off. Mission accomplished media. I was watching some Destiny. Good streamer. You should watch him. See what's on Amazon. Fuck it. This is what we do now, right? We just endlessly surf for hours to find one piece of shit we're gonna watch for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then because we're trained to task switch, we task switch. Yeah, I have this weird issue that I've never gotten checked out about my esophagus, so I clear my throat, and people think I'm like offended, but it's just yet another physical problem I'm fucking ignoring because there's other fish to fry right now. Alright. Oh my god. Alright, I found a stupid ass Christian movie. Man. Alright, so I gotta pray to the Holy Spirit and open my Bible, apparently, according to this fucking movie. Immediately retarded. I am dumber for having clicked on this.
after the flood, and after Noah and his sons and their wives went forth from the ark, there was a man begotten by his grandson Cush, whose name was Nimrod. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel,
None of this is real.
which means confusion. The name Nimrod means rebellion. Nimrod was a rebel.
There was no great flood, guys.
And as the leader of the kingdom of Babel,
Made up.
Nimrod was also connected with the building of the Tower of Babel.
There's no Tower of Babel either.
Said, go to.
They don't know who Nimrod is. Made up.
Whose top may reach unto heaven.
Made up bullshit.
According to the historian Josephus, Nimrod said he would be
That's a real guy.
revenged on God
Josephus, he's good.
if he should have a mind to drown the world again. But that he would build a tower too high for the waters to reach, and that he would avenge him.
So, they're talking about Josephus. He's a real guy, so you gotta know. So, he followed on the heels of Philo. Philo was basically marrying Greek philosophy with Judaism. That was his task. Now, if you want Jewish philosophy, my favorite book of the Bible is Ecclesiastes. It's definitely philosophical. So Josephus' task was to explain to the Romans, in particular Vespasian, who's his patroness, who the Jews were. And so he does talk extensively about, their history, and because the Romans, so according to the Romans, those were like the jihadists. They didn't know who the hell the kingdom of Judea. They didn't know, because the Roman-Jewish relationship started with Pompey. When Pompey, this is what made Pompey's reputation in the East, is he was able to go over there and just beat the shit out of everyone. And he was invited in by the Hasmoneans, and you can actually see that if you read the book of Maccabees, which is one of the books in the Bible that, of course, the Protestants removed, but it's completely historical. You can back up what's in it, where they destroyed Antiochus, and they did so through an alliance with the Romans. So that's a little bit of the history there, and then eventually Jews had an interesting history in the Roman Empire where they were probably 10% of the population at one point. So, yeah, they were tolerated until they became a problem. The Romans had a very cosmopolitan worldview, which is why you're able to have Mithraism and Manichaeism, and there's so many. There's Egyptian god. There's the Isis cult. There's of course there's Christianity. You had Celtic and Germanic deities that were brought in as part of the pantheon, or they were basically said, okay, well, Jupiter's equivalent to Wotan and all this and all that. So there was always room for the Romans to accept your religion. However, if you were a problem, they would find your god and kill it. They would go to your temple and they would burn it to the ground. So they would go to the Isle of Man. And let's say the Druids are a problem. Well, so when Boudicca's rebellion breaks out in Britain, Ammianus was that his name? No, I don't know that guy's name. It's the Watling Street General. I forget. This is off the cuff, so I'm not gonna bother looking up his name. But when Boudicca's rebellion breaks out, the Romans are actually in the Isle of Anglesey. Is it not the Isle of Man? Anglesey, and they're actually assaulting the last of the Druids and butchering them, because the Druids were the cornerstone of the British resistance, and the Romans were really threatened by their role in Celtic society. And so when that rebellion breaks out, the Romans are caught off guard. That's why it takes them so long to get from there to London and to have the battle of Watling Street, which they annihilate the Britons. They completely just embarrass them. So yeah. Alright, so we're 30 seconds in, and there's already some dumb shit. This is, at least God's Not Dead was an attempt to, not be stupid, but, God is dead, so that movie is stupid.
himself on God for destroying their forefathers. The motive for building the Tower of Babel, according to Josephus, was to protect humanity against another flood. Before the flood, God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. When God saw that the children of men were building a tower in rebellion against him, he wanted to put an end to it and said, "Go to. Let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all.
All right. So from the fields of anthropology and linguistics, we know that there was no one language. Asinine. Bullshit. Made up. Made up.
All the earth. Tradition says that Nimrod's wife was also his mother and granddaughter of Noah. According to various legends, Semiramis became pregnant after engaging in an adulterous affair while married to Nimrod. Around this time, Nimrod dies a violent and untimely death.
Like, you'll whine about politicians lying to you, but you let them lie to you about this. This is metaphysics.
Semiramis makes the most
Right?
audacious claim. She
About the nature of the
publicly declares
universe,
that upon
and they're
Nimrod's
lying.
death,
And
he
you
had
believe
been
in it.
resurrected
Why?
as the god of the sun. As the sun god, Nimrod used his sun rays to miraculously inseminate Semiramis with a child.
Like, you want to believe in God? Okay. Be a deist. You know, Thomas Paine was a deist. He could back it up. You know, be like Thomas Jefferson. Cut the New Testament into pieces and just believe Jesus' words. Founding father, by the way. We're not a Christian nation. We're founded as one. It's a fucking lie. It's a lie told to you by Dominionists who took over the Republican Party in Ronald Reagan's era. So, you know, go figure. Because Barry Goldwater's party would not have been sucking Jerry Falwell's dick, that's for sure. That's a segue. So, yeah. Like, we know there's no proto-language, that's for sure. But all this is nonsense. It's all made up. You know, yeah, if you want to believe in God, you can say, like, oh, God was a Boltzmann brain, Boltzmann being, Ludwig Boltzmann, who had this theory that consciousness could, you know, over enough time, quantum fluctuations in the void can produce a mind, right? Okay, well, you can say if there's basically nothingness that extends through eternity, a mind could arise from that, and you could call that, I mean, that's just theoretical bullshit. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm giving you a leg to stand on if you want to believe in God. No, I'm pretty agnostic. I don't believe in that shit. But, yeah, you want to believe in all that or fucking, whatever. You know, as long as you're not trying to, you know, pass laws in my country or turn us into the fucking Handmaid's Tale or some weird Baptist Taliban shit where the society doesn't run properly, we're good. I mean, it doesn't affect me. I just think you're dumbass, and a lot of people do, they think. You know, it doesn't matter. How's intolerance feel? Not good, right? You might want to think about that.
This child was thus considered to be divinely conceived. The child's name was Tammuz, which she claimed was the reincarnation of Nimrod. Thus, Semiramis was both Nimrod's wife and mother. After the scattering that occurs at the Tower of Babel,
Keeping it in the family.
the story of the miraculous conception of this child disseminated throughout the world and led to the rise of sun worship, along with the various birth, death, and rebirth cults that are littered through history. These mystery religions of future generations adopted different names for Nimrod, Semiramis, and their child.
No. 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 All right. So a lot of you dumbass conspiracy theorists that watch like Alex Jones and you think Moloch is being worshipped. No. Anybody with a background in comparative religion can tell you where these gods came from and There was definitely not a mystery cult that just persisted from Babylon. Because Babylon, like Greece, had dark ages. There were Babylonian dark ages. There were multiple groups in the area. There were the Hittites. There were the Mitanni, Babylonians, Syrians. I'm forgetting the Iranian group, the Elamites. So all in that area, all different, had comparable gods, but they're not. There was no cult that was passed from Babylon to Greece. Greece came, for instance, because Greece is the mother of Western culture, so I'm using that as the connection point logically, because that's what you would do. All right, so Greece came late into the area. If you need an account of what Greece thought of Babylon, you can read Herodotus, which is where you get the seven wonders. And in fact, the wonder he mentioned is probably entirely fictional. So that tells you the quality of connection between those two societies. Egypt would be another connection point, but they were insular. They did not like Mesopotamians. They were their own thing. Obviously, if you're Egypt, you're going to have a superiority complex, and for a reason. So, no, there was no mystery cult. There's no one fucking cult that's worshiping Nimrod, who never existed outside of the Old Testament. It's just a made-up character. It probably refers to a leader, okay? Maybe like Sargon of Akkad. And no, not the stupid fucking YouTuber, the actual guy. So, again, like, stupid. Within seconds. We're already stupid.
Tammuz. This was the birth of paganism.
So again, paganism goes way back. In fact, you can look at the Lascaux paintings. These are Paleolithic paintings. You see a lot of dream imagery that's obviously drug-induced. They took mushrooms of some kind or some kind of psychoactive compound. Zoroastrians predated Christianity by a millennia at least. They think the oldest parts of the Bhagavad Gita, not the Bhagavad Gita, but the Rig Veda, 1200 BC, very, very ancient, probably started with the Harappan civilization, Mohenjo-Daro. So, nonsense. Paganism, again, varies across culture, but, let's be real, the gods are created by the poets, okay? So, what you get in your particular society is really based on what your literary tradition is doing. So in the case of the Rig Veda, there are multiple hymns to what's called Soma. We don't know what Soma is, but it was a goddamn good drug. They were having a good time taking that because it's all over that thing. So in other words, one of our first religions, and the Zoroastrians also have the same deal, and since they're related linguistically, the Persian language and the Proto-Indo-European or Aryan language, if you want to call it that, loaded term, but it has value. Those words, you got Soma on the Indian subcontinent, and you have Haoma in the Iranian plateau. And so both of these cultures with similar faiths, I guess, are taking this drug, okay? And that's how they met their gods, right? So, Joe Rogan talks about meeting machine elves. Well, yeah, our ancestors did the same thing. Where do you think all this came from, And so there's a really good chance that a lot of our religious ideas come from drugs. In fact, there's an extensive amount of evidence that that's the case. So we happen to run across plants with the pharmacological properties that led to hallucination, and now we have the birth of religion. Yeah. So, stupid ideas from this movie. And before you think I'm just like ranting and being angry, anger is a gift. Absolutely. You should be mad when you see this. Well, you should laugh. I did laugh. It's hilarious. It's fucking fun watching this movie because it's so stupid. I can't believe it exists. Like, there's actual people in the credits of this movie. They made money. Like, what? Like, you're out there worried about your dreams and some asshole made this fucking movie and people are taking it seriously and these guys made money and you're worried about your dreams not being attainable? No, son. You gotta get to work.
The Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now, if you were anything like me, you probably loved to study mythology, and this book might have been your introduction to false gods and goddesses. You have Isis and Horus from Egyptian mythology, which most atheists will say is an older version of.
All right. He's about to go full retard. Okay. And my apologies for the intellectually and developmentally disabled for my comparison of them to this guy, because they don't really deserve that comparison. Yeah. So he's about to start talking about Egypt. Go pick that book up right now. Buy it. Buy the Egyptian Book of the Dead and read it, and then read the Psalms side by side. You're going to notice some similarities. Which is funny because we know that Akhenaten was roughly contemporaneous with what we would identify as Moses, but Moses never existed. So, whatever, 1200, 1300 BC, whatever it might be. And more ancient than that. My Egyptian history is real shitty. It's all one long fucking pyramid building spree. I don't know. But the point is, he was imposing monotheism. So maybe not monotheism, maybe it was henotheism, where you have the primary god and you have ancillary gods, but you have a concentration on that one deity. So that idea could have easily made it to Israel, because we know that the story, as indicated in the Bible, of the invasion of Canaan never happened. There's not dozens of cities burned by Joshua, which is really weird, because the story itself of them coming out of Egypt and into Canaan, well, the Egyptians did not keep slaves. They had a corvée labor system in their society, meaning they could just call up their peasants who were actually well fed to do their pyramids, and that's why all this garbage about Egyptian technology and all this ancient aliens garbage is insulting to our ancestors, and it's fucking stupid. It's not real. It wasn't aliens, all right? So, okay. Book of Joshua, genocidal violence, brutal. If you read it as a modern person, you're going to be like, what the hell is happening? There's parts in the Old Testament where they fucking they cut off the fucking foreskin of the guys and they stack it up like it's okay. We're in Clive Barker territory with that kind of stuff. So, all right. Why would the Jews, and forgive my use of that phrase, why would the Israelis, Hebrews, make up a story like that? Well, we know they were in captivity in Babylon. In fact, that's when they really entered history, is around the reign of Hezekiah. So, what happened is, I think they hung out with the Assyrians and the Babylonians, and they saw all this brutal bas-reliefs and bragging about all this butchery, and they knew they had to be a cool kid, so they made up the story. Because we know archaeologically that the Israelites happened gradually. We know that by their pottery. We know that by their cities, the way that they're built. There's no question about the archaeology on this. There's no question. Okay, so I hear a lot about biblical archaeology. Well, it works in both directions. So you're looking at like King David. There's one inscription, one, and the Bible says there's an empire there, and there's one inscription on like a little piece of rock. There's just the name David. There's no evidence of Solomon either. So what is all this? What is all this nonsense? And it's natural for a culture to have its myths, but why are we still stuck on this? That's just interesting. I guess it doesn't hurt anybody if King David is real or not. He's an interesting character. I like King David. I like the Old Testament. I like Gideon. I like the Book of Judges, but none of that's real. None of it happened. So, I hate to tell you that.
Mary and Jesus Christ. And of course, you have other Mary-like and Christ-like deities in other mystery religions, such as Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and Babylonian mythology that predate Christianity. Why is this so? How was it that There were so many virgin birth religions around the world way before the Christ was even born into humanity. This was the question I've asked myself many years ago.
All right. He's about to do the Satan planet him there thing. That's what he's about to say. Which actually, that's from the church fathers. They actually were the first ones to come up with that idea. But we all know that a Roman soldier was parting Mary's Red Sea with his outstretched staff, and he let his people go. That's where Jesus came from. That's what the Talmud says about Jesus. That's the logical explanation. We know there wasn't a goddamn virgin birth. Fuck out of here with that shit. So, I mean, what's the big deal? You know? And Joseph, you know, forgave a bitch. That's all he did. He wasn't worried about it. It's a good dude right there, you know?
The thing is, the birth of pagan religions came about after the flood, but the prophecy of a virgin birth was declared by God way before that time. In Genesis 3, verses 14 and 15, soon after Satan had succeeded in causing Adam and Eve to sin, God declared to him.
And again, okay, there's no mention of Satan in the Old Testament. I don't know if you guys know that. Like, he's not in there. It's been translated as Satan, but if they're talking about the morning star, maybe they're talking about the morning star. And if they're talking about a snake, maybe they're talking about a snake. In fact, a lot of this Manichaean, Zoroastrian dualism shit is not in Judaism anymore. You talk to your average Jewish person, they're just going to be like, well, we worship God and we do good. Right? So this nonsense it's not credible. So, yeah, I mean, Satan is clearly a fictional character. And if Satan was in opposition to the God of the Old Testament, who couldn't want to be on his side? I mean, but frankly, let's be real.
His fate. The Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. God told the serpent that the seed of the woman will bruise his head. Now, in every case, the seed always comes from a man, which enters the woman, thus the conception of a baby. The enemy knew that this was not to be an ordinary seed, and that this was not to be an ordinary birth. He knew that it would be a virgin birth, and so he devised a plan through Semiramis, and fathered these counterfeit virgin birth religions throughout the ancient world, along with the worship of the...
Because clearly, that would be the explanation, right? Instead of just, you know, people wanting there to be a nice, miraculous story for their religion.
the Son in God's stead. This he did to put doubt in the minds of people by questioning, out of all these counterfeits, which Jesus' story.
Okay, doubt is the basis of all science and philosophy, so this guy is clearly, you just can't fucking think. This is why people talk about faith. I'm just letting you know. I mean,
is the authentic. And so today we have atheists ridiculing Christians, saying we don't know what we believe because there are so many religions with a story similar to Christ's. Little did they know, these false religions were set up by Satan to promote false worship and idolatry. So how do we know if God truly does exist? And how do we know which God is the authentic? My name is Tilla, and I believe that Bible prophecy is one of the many strong evidences that God does truly exist, and that the God...
okay, so this Asian looking dude, his name's Attila. So that's pretty badass, actually. So that's cool, you know. Bet you want to listen to some Hungarian folk metal or some shit.
out of the Bible is the one true God. To declare over 2,500 years of human history in pinpoint accuracy, years before it even started coming to pass, is nothing ordinary. Daniel's account is a very interesting account. The book of Daniel was written about 600 years before the time of Christ. The entire book was written by Daniel the prophet himself, except for chapter 4, which was written by King Nebuchadnezzar. The name Daniel comes from a juxtaposition of two words, Elohim, meaning.
All right. Book of Daniel. Here's the problem with prophecy, guys. What is the more plausible explanation here? A guy writes a fucking book that violates the arrow of time and he's able to see the goddamn future, or he writes the book after the fact and they just say it was written before. What's more plausible? I'm sure the guy who violates the arrow of time, maybe he's the one and he just like bends the matrix to his will. I'm sure that's the explanation, and not just writing the book and saying it was written beforehand. So I hear about prophecy, and if you read the prophets, it's all social commentary. They're all attacking the monarchy, okay? And there are reasons for that in terms of what we know about the origins of Judaism. So you had different cults within Judaism. You had a henotheistic cult, you had a Yahwistic cult, and the prophets were Yahwists. So they wanted a monotheistic God based on their war god, okay? Yahweh was a war god. This is why you see in the prophecies, in these books of the prophets, all this conflict with the Asherah poles and all that, because there was a conflict within Judaism that was based out of one being monotheistic or henotheistic, the other one being pagan. So it was basically religious war, and that's where we got what we think of as Judaism. There was no initial monotheistic cult and then a decay. There was an initial paganistic religion that grew into a monotheistic one for whatever reason. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is a theory. It's not out of the question. There's a lot of Egyptian influence in Canaan. It was a province of Egypt. And also, there tends to be a movement towards more of monotheism or pantheism, or whatever you can do to consolidate your gods. In fact, Stoicism and Epicureanism, for instance, those are examples from Greco-Roman culture that had movements of the same sort. We know what happens. They weren't stupid enough to kill each other over it, but, well, not yet.
Meaning God, and Dan meaning judge. The name Daniel means God is judge. The story of Daniel began in a tragedy. God's people have been disobedient to God's law, and since they were stubborn and disobeyed, God had to send them adversity. The nation of Babylon came to destroy Jerusalem and carry away some of their finest and best young people into Babylon, where they were trained in the customs, societies, government, and culture of the Babylonians. Daniel was one of those who were trained to be among the wise men or magicians in Babylon. Now in Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had a dream that disturbed him from his sleep.
All right. I've stuffed my face with enough potato chips. I've made it 7 minutes into that movie with 35 minutes of commentary. Keep it sleazy.